It's time for episode 124 of The Crisis Show here on YouTube and the For Immediate Release Podcast Network and on iTunes. Good afternoon from New York. My name is Rich Klein. I'm president of Rich Klein Crisis Management and founder and host of The Crisis Show. Today is Thursday, February 23rd, and we're going to talk about a story that aired earlier this week on CNN regarding nursing home sex abuse. What happened was CNN has an investigations team, and they did an in-depth study of this problem across the United States with sex abuse incidents at nursing homes. They found, they analyzed data for the last 3 years, 2013, 2016, and some of the results were quite startling. The point of the show today, while I'm going to talk about what nursing homes can do to protect their reputation, is that whenever the national media focuses the light on your industry, your business, your organization is also in a crisis. And that's really important to understand. So the things we're going to talk about today and the tips I'm going to give you really relate to this broader issue of when the national media does an expose of your industry, you have to treat it as an executive or as an administrator, as a senior level staff person. You have to treat this as a crisis for your business and organization. So what I wanted to first of all do is just show you the story real briefly, kind of scroll through it. This is, again, it's been in the works for a few years, this story. Here's the headline. There's two different versions of it. This happens to be the one from CNN's press room talking about the investigation itself and the story, how they went about it and so forth. They used graphics, they used video interviews and so forth in this piece that I looked at. One of the things that jumped out at me, though, and should startle all of us, is that CNN found that more than 1,000 nursing homes have been cited for mishandling while failing to investigate or prevent alleged cases of rape, sexual assault, and abuse at their facilities between 2013 and 2016. Nearly 100 of these facilities have been cited multiple times during the same period. At least a quarter of them were allegedly perpetrated by aides, nurses, and other staff members. So for me, that was really what jumped out at me in this story. Let me just bring myself back here for a second. So folks, what I want to talk about is, first of all, the impact this could have on nursing homes everywhere. But again, the larger point is what you as whatever business you're in, what you need to do when the media shines a broad light on your industry. What I did after seeing the story yesterday, Wednesday, February 22nd, is write an article on LinkedIn about the 5 things that I believe nursing home executives should do right now to protect reputation. And as I said earlier, it's not just applicable to nursing homes. I'm using that as an example because of the hook of the story, but you should look at this article as well, no matter what industry you're in, because the same tips I give apply to any business when the media is shining a negative light on your industry. So let me pull up this article just to show you a little bit of it. Let me pull it up here. I never make it easy on here. Sorry about that. Okay, so here we have my article. As again, I say it should be a wake-up call, and I offer basically five paragraphs of advice, what you can do right now. So the first thing that I think executives at nursing homes should do in this situation is to check out immediately your social media. Start monitoring it more regularly. If you're not monitoring it around the clock already, you should be, at least every few hours, to see what's being said. And what often happens when there's a major negative news story about an industry is people start to think about their own situation. So for example, if I have a parent in a nursing home, I'm going to want to know about that nursing home in where one of my parents might be, and start asking some tough questions. I might post questions, I might call them. And these are just things that most people would do in a situation like this if they saw a report like this, because you don't, especially when you're not thinking about nursing homes in this way, you don't expect that sex abuse is a problem in a nursing home. But now with this story, the reality is that it is in some places. So the first thing you have to do is read the CNN story. So whenever there's a negative news story about your industry, read it carefully. Obviously, the first thing you need to do is make sure that your business is not listed in their story, that you're not mentioned in that story. But even if you're not, you have to take it seriously. So pay extra careful attention to any uptick in posts on your social media. It may take the form of comments or questions, or even the reviews section. If you have a business page, that's often a place people go to talk about your organization, your business. So that's my first piece of advice. Get on social media, but more importantly, not just to be reactionary. Every business should have a coherent strategy and policy to decide what content you will respond to on social media and what you will say. Let me say that again. This is really important. You need a coherent strategy and policy to decide what content you as a company will respond to and what you will say. And folks, please don't leave this to a junior social media coordinator. I see this all the time, particularly when you have a reputation challenge like the nursing homes have today. You want to put a senior communications professional on that job. And if you don't have somebody in-house, because very often nursing home administration staff don't focus on this, hire a professional, hire somebody who has a lot of experience in public relations and/or crisis communications. That will be worth the money spent, okay, even if you do it for a short time. Number two, you want to also draft a carefully worded but sharply worded statement that says you have a zero tolerance policy for sex abuse, a zero tolerance policy for sex abuse. Real important to draft a statement like that, because as I talk about later, you will need that statement. You'll see why in a minute when I get to it. Number three, you want to hold a meeting. Administrative executives of nursing should hold a meeting as soon as possible with your chief human resource executive and your general counsel, and find out where your vulnerabilities are with any employee who might have received a slap on the wrist for suspected sex abuse, and take appropriate action. Folks, in a crisis of any kind, it's the actions you take that are much more important than the words. So in this case, when there's a major national story about sex abuse and people's antennas are raised on this issue, you need to look into your own situation to make sure you have a clean record. Even if you're not mentioned in that story, it still could affect you down the road with local media and questions from the public. So make sure you don't have any vulnerabilities here. Now that the story is out and people are talking about sex abuse, look at your own track record. And if you haven't taken action against somebody who's been suspected of this, now would be the time to do it, to protect yourself against negative media coverage and, more importantly, lawsuits. You want to, number four on my list of top 5 things to do, you want to be prepared for your local media outlet to start asking questions by piggybacking on the CNN story. So let me tell you how this works. Very often, this is a perfect example. There's a national story about an entire industry. Local newspapers, local TV and radio stations say, what are the local nursing homes in my area doing about this issue? What are they saying about this issue? Have they had a problem with this issue? So it's really important that you be prepared for an increase in calls from reporters over the next few days and weeks about what your track record looks like when it comes to sex abuse. What kind of procedures do you have in place to protect against it? Do you do sufficient background checks of your staff to make sure you're not hiring people like that? And are you taking appropriate actions to rid yourself of staff like that? Again, that goes to my earlier point about taking the right actions with human resources and general counsel if there's an existing problem. Okay, so that's really important to be ready for the local media. And they're going to ask many of the same questions that CNN asked of the nursing homes they investigated. And to do this properly, you need proper media training and the proper messaging created as soon as possible. And that's where someone like myself would come in, a crisis communications expert who can come in with a video camera, pepper you with tough questions that you're not prepared for, and then give you a quick audit on how you did and give you tips on how to improve your presentation, tips on how to improve the way you answer questions. Folks, I've I've sat across the table, done media training with top executives and leaders in nonprofits, and was surprised at how little trained, how they didn't handle this well, in short. Very important. You don't want to say no comment. There are ways to answer questions without being seen as evasive, such as, we don't have the information on that right now. I'll get back to you on, I'll look it up. I'll talk to my staff and get you that information, get you that document, whatever it is. Just some tips on media training are very important. So get media training and make sure you have the right messages created that protect your reputation. Number 5, this is the final point I made in my article. Be prepared for your local and state government to follow the lead of CNN and shine a light on your industry. This happens all the time. Politicians and their staff read what's being said. They look for opportunities to make a difference. Whatever their agenda is, this is what happens. So you need to be prepared for things like legislative hearings at the state and county level. State attorney generals often launch investigations based on news stories. In fact, here in New York, we have a very active attorney general who does just that. So again, legislative hearings, attorney general investigations, and also real importantly is politicians may want to introduce tough new legislation about compliance that could change the way you do business. So you have hearings, you have attorney general investigations, you have new legislation that may be introduced. But getting back to those hearings, you also may be asked to testify, or you may volunteer to testify as a spokesperson for your industry. And folks, this could be a good opportunity to separate yourselves from the bad apples in your industry and to show your leadership, your thought leadership about what to do in terms of keeping a nursing home protected from allegations of sex abuse, things that you've done, things that you think other nursing homes might do. This could also raise your visibility as a leader in your industry, but also give you cover, give you some protection if any allegations ever come up against your nursing home. So this is really important as well. And you want to also, if you're giving prepared remarks before any government agency, you want to get somebody to help you draft that, not only who knows the issues and can write intelligently about the issues, but who also can write for the ear, because it's very different writing an article or a blog post versus writing for prepared remarks for testimony. So just keep that in mind as well. So these were my 5 points. The article can be found under Rich Klein Crisis Management on LinkedIn. It's on Twitter at Rich Klein Crisis. Take a look at it, save it, copy and paste it for yourself, share it with your staff. The 5 points I make can give you some cover when the media shines a light on your industry. And if it hasn't happened already, it will at some point. Believe me, it does happen. And very often, people who are not named in the article think, well, we don't have to worry about it. But in fact, you do. A light shined on your industry is a light shined on your business. So please, if you want to comment anything that you heard today on this version of this episode of The Crisis Show, please use hashtag nursing homes and hashtag The Crisis Show. We'll look forward to hearing what you think about some of the comments I made and about the story itself on CNN. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you again soon.